So hello, welcome to the video and welcome to a rather pleasant Barcelona. Now today I'm going to do something that I've been trying to do for about 10 years and today is finally the day. Now before the you-know-what, when I used to live in London and Heathrow Airport was in reasonable range for me, I did quite a number of day trips. These lately seem to have been rebranded as extreme day trips by the internet's generation, but back in the day they were just regular day trips. You'd get BA's first flight somewhere in the morning and pretty much the last flight back in the evening and enjoy a day somewhere different. And you'd have some great fun visiting some interesting places. I went to Dublin, I went to Hamburg, I went to Geneva and Zurich, and the furthest I ever made it was to Lisbon. But one trip I never quite got round to doing was what I'm going to do today, which is to fly to Barcelona, rent a car and drive to Andorra. So I'm here in Barcelona, I've just rented a car and I'm about to get in it and drive to Andorra. Now Andorra will be country number 102 for me, and it's one of only 5 countries in the world not to have an airport or a commercial airport at least. So those 5 countries are the 5 European microstates. I've been to 3 of those, Andorra today, which will only leave me with San Marino to go to collect the full set. It's about a 2.5 to 3 hour drive up into the Pyrenees to reach Andorra. It's going to be quite chilly when you get up there, and then obviously it'll be about a 3 hour drive back again. So if you'd like to see whether I make it, and if you'd like to see quite what Andorra is like when I get there, stick around. Hi, I'm Matt and this is Matt's Planet. I aim to entertain, educate and inspire with my travel adventures from planning to execution. I'll show you how you can travel in style for a lot less than you'd think. So subscribe so you can come with me. Andorra sits in the Pyrenees between France and Spain and is roughly equidistant from Toulouse and Barcelona. As we'll see, the country is a significant ski destination, so visitors usually fly into one or other of those major cities before being bussed up to the resorts. There are also regular buses from both airports if driving is too much of a faff. Andorra is first mentioned as a territory in 839 and became what we'd recognise as a country in 1278. That agreement involved the splitting of the territory's sovereignty between a Count of France and a Bishop of Spain. That Count's title eventually transferred to the French head of state, so even today the French president is a Prince of Andorra. That makes Emmanuel Macron an elected co-monarch, although no one who actually lives in Andorra gets to vote for him. It's a bit of an odd arrangement. The other co-monarch is still the bishop, specifically the Catholic Bishop of Catalonia. There have been a few challenges to its independence over the last 800 years, but it's had a pretty much unbroken run of independence for a very long time. Being tucked away in the mountains probably helped. I drove where the car's GPS told me to drive, avoiding tolls as I passed through Pont and Oliana on my way up to the mountains. It's a very pleasant drive with some very attractive scenery, but as I was on my own, my eyes had to stay mainly on the road. The first clue that taking a bus was probably the smarter option. This is a very attractive part of Spain actually that would be fun to explore at more leisure. Andorra is a member of the United Nations, but it's not in the EU and neither is it in the Schengen zone. So when you do reach the border, you encounter the full style of border infrastructure older viewers will be familiar with from travelling around Europe in the last century. I pulled over to see if I could find a welcome to Andorra sign for a selfie, but this was the Spanish exit shed, which seemed to be unmanned and did not detain me. So I continued on through what must be one of the very last no man's land border areas in Western Europe before reaching the Andorran side, which again can only be described as light touch. These booths were manned, but I wasn't asked to stop. Note the Andorran flags and the Andorra sign, which looked like an EU sign, even though Andorra's not in the EU. And I was in Andorra, country number 102, and the roundabout confirmed it if I was in any doubt. A little anticlimactic perhaps, but being interrogated by border guards is usually something best avoided. Andorra likes its roundabouts actually, even when there don't seem to be any side roads leading off them. They do slow traffic down a bit though. There's basically one road through the country with the occasional side road leading off up into the mountains. The capital city Andorra la Vella is about 7 kilometres up the road from the border, and it's the highest capital city in Europe. Although, to put that in context, it's slightly lower than the peak of Mount Snowdon in Wales. Johannesburg is 700 metres higher, and La Paz in Bolivia is 3.5 times higher. I followed the signs into the centre of the capital, and once again arriving by car wasn't ideal. There was very little parking in the heart of the old town. It looked nice enough, but I couldn't find out what you would call beating heart of the city, and travelling solo made it quite tricky to sightsee whilst also ensuring I didn't drive into anything or anyone. I did eventually find a place to park, which turned out to be free for a stay of less than 30 minutes, but it still ended up costing me money. And that's because the first thing I did was check Google Maps to work out where I was, at which point I realised that as Andorra isn't in the EU, my EU roaming package didn't apply, and so my brief search cost me £6 in roaming fees. I was disproportionately annoyed by this, I have to say. But I did have a quick stroll around, and it was quite a pleasant place. The mountains are never far away in Andorra. It had taken 3.5 hours to get there from Barcelona airport, so I was a little worried about quite how long this day was going to end up being, particularly as I'd decided to drive all the way through the country and out the other end into France, which would leave me an even longer drive back down to Barcelona. So as Andorra is known for its scenery, not its museums, I decided not to linger in the capital for too much longer. So I got back in the car and went back through the town. It reminded me a little of Monaco in that there's obviously wealth there. Some of the cars I passed were very nice, but there's next to nowhere to park them. There were lots of valet parking bays outside of boutiques, but for a place that's most accessible by car, there wasn't a whole lot of consideration paid to what to do with it when you got there. The road climbs quite quickly as you head northeast out of the capital. This was April the 1st, and as I'd only seen glimpses of snow on distant peaks on my way into the country, I wasn't expecting to see much more as I headed towards France. But when I reached the town of Soldier, which at 1,700 metres above sea level is almost the same altitude as Johannesburg, I was quite surprised to see snow below the level of the car to the right of the road. And all of a sudden I was right in the middle of a ski resort, with chairlifts and resorts and people walking around with skis on their shoulders. It was absolutely beautiful actually, and there was plenty of snow still around even at this latish point in the season. But it was onwards, ever onwards, and as I closed in on the French border, I found myself having to take a snap decision, road or tunnel. Again, not having a navigator was a bit of a pain here, as I now know that the road looked like it would have been tremendous fun to drive, but I had no idea whether the road was even open, so opted for the tunnel, even though it cost me €8. As tunnels go, it was lovely, and 2 kilometres later you pop out into the last few metres of Andorra. It wasn't indicated at the time, but the entrance to this roundabout here is actually the border with France, and that was the end of Andorra. France didn't look much different, although you can just about see that the road here looks slightly less well maintained. And about another 2 kilometres further down from the exit of the tunnel you encounter the French border post. And again, despite this being a border with the significance of those between Greece and Turkey, or Croatia and Serbia, I wasn't asked to stop. And here's proof that I was now in France. Accessing Andorra through France is the more scenic option, although it's certainly easier to drive down the hairpin bends you'll encounter than it is to drive up them. And it's not that long before you pass back into Spain, although I didn't notice any signage to indicate the international crossing. And through Puigcerda, I was a little annoyed later, as there's a Spanish enclave within France a few miles away that I didn't notice at the time. I do like exclaves and enclaves. And it was at about this point that I decided that I'd had enough of driving and just wanted it to be over. There was still 150 kilometres to go to get back to Barcelona, so I turned off the no tolls setting on my GPS and let fate take control, which was a decision that cost me about €30 in assorted tolls on the way back, but probably saved me an hour's driving. I was really quite keen to get out of the car by now. Although the car itself was actually quite nice, a Renault Captur that was perfectly comfortable and did the job well. I paid only £23 for for a day's rental of a medium Group C car from Avis as a BA holiday, and I paid about 60 quid for fuel. And eventually I made it back to Barcelona. Would I do it again? Absolutely not. I've been to Andorra now, and I can't imagine any circumstance when I'd want to go back. It might be a different story if I was a skier, but I'm not, and I've got the knee x-rays to prove it. Would I recommend you visit Andorra? Absolutely. It's a really interesting place that's exactly the sort of off-the-beaten-track destination a viewer of this channel would probably love. But I'd recommend taking a bus and staying a night there to be able to experience and explore the place better than I was able to. By all means drive, but if you do, take a buddy who can share the navigation and driving duties with you. It's a long day if you attempt it solo. I didn't rack up a huge mileage total, but very few of those miles are on multi-lane motorways where you can whack on the cruise control and give your feet a rest. I felt every one of my 54 years as I waddled over to the airport terminal to return the car. So thanks for watching, a bit different, but I hope you enjoyed it. Give the video a like if you did, and please consider subscribing if you're new. And if you'd like to support what I'm doing more directly, there is a Patreon account, blah, blah, blah. So thanks again for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Goodbye.